Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hire Moment Mastermind. We're delighted to have you here for our Friday job search pick me up. I am joined today by Vern Schellinger and Tenny Good. Vern is a master networker. Tenny is in the federal government resume space, and I am a career coach and an association recruiter, and we are here to answer your questions. So before we do the open Q&A, I wanted to mention that I had a very interesting two back-to-back spontaneous coaching calls the other day. That literally just kind of came out of the blue. Two people said, "Hey, I've got this, 10-minute question for you," and it turned out to be the exact same question. And so by the second one, I said, "Okay, I've got to bring this up on Friday." And what it was is that in both situations, each individual had they had been asked by the employer in the beginning of the process what their salary requirements were. Okay, and in one case the person said 110, and the other case the person said 120, which is very interesting, similar numbers. And in both cases, the job seekers got the very strong impression that there was more money on the table. And in one case, so much so that the employer had said, when the person said 110, the employer said, "Oh, is that your bottom?" And the person's like, "Oh my gosh, if they think that that's my bottom, what's the top?" Right? And so in both cases, they were about to go through final level interviews, and they wanted to make sure that they were setting themselves up for a higher number because they realized that they had lowballed themselves. So what I suggested to both of them is have a conversation, not an email, with the recruiter, the employer, whoever your point of contact is, before the offer comes in. Once the offer comes in, that employer has gone through rigmarole. They've gotten signatures and they've, put it all together, and it's harder. I mean, you can negotiate after you get the offer, but it's harder to push them up. Okay, once they kind of have this number in their mind. What I recommended is that they go to the employer and say, "Look," and do it right after the final level interviews. Okay, after it goes well, go to the employer and say, "Look, as you're making your decision here about whether to, bring me on, I wanted to revisit the compensation conversation, and I wanted to, say, look, when I first, spoke with you about my compensation needs, that was based under certain assumptions and about the role and my background and all of that. But now that I've been through the whole process, I realize that the scope of the role is actually more expansive than what I realized. And I believe that the role is worth more than the number that I put out there. And so what I like to do is invite you into a conversation to see what can we do to lift that number up closer to where I think the role actually should be." So what I would ask you, Mr. Employer, is, and I know this sounds bold, right? I would ask you, what were you actually budgeting for this? Why not? Invite them in, because that employer is not expecting that question. You see, you've already given your number. So now you have the right to ask back and say, I had mentioned 110 or I had mentioned 120. What were you actually targeting for this? What did you believe that the role was worth when you put this out there? And see what they say. And say, "Well, yeah, we might have some flexibility." And then you literally do a pre-negotiation with them before the offer comes in, and see what they can do. And actually, you could throw out a higher number. It's fine. So in both of those cases, or one case, the 110 person, I said, depending on what they say, you might say, "Look, I really think that the role is worth like 130 or something like that." They can always come in a little lower, but you go high. So it's okay even if you started low, you come in with a higher number, they can get you down a little bit. But if they come in at the 110, it's harder to push them up. Okay. So have that pre-negotiation conversation and invite them in, almost like you were a colleague, right? If you were the hiring manager, and the hiring manager talks to HR all the time, "Well, what's the salary band?" And they back and forth, they banter about the compensation. You can do that too, but you can only do that because you've already given a number. Now you can say, "So what were you really thinking for this?" And then see what you can do. So that would be my recommendation. If you feel like you've lowballed yourself, you can go back and invite them into a pre-negotiation. So that's my advice. Vern or Tenny, did you have any comments on that?
No, the only comment I had is, you have nothing to lose by going
Right.
into that conversation. And I think it's great advice that Youre Sure is providing.
Nothing to lose, only to gain. Sonia?
I have a question in relation to that, because I had something where I had a verbal conversation, and the recruiter went down the list. Okay, you got this, you got that. She said, well, you put your salary recommendation online, that's fine, and kept going. I never got to talk about it. And I was wondering, based on what you just said, how would the recruiter, would they take you as that you're not, I don't know, what's the word, stable, uncertain, whatever, about your salary, or you're trying to
No, you could, because
milk them for more? I mean,
well, look, they'll understand every job seeker should be, is trying to get as much as possible. The reason why I framed it the way that I did is because you're taking it away from what you want and putting it into what the role is worth. Say, I came into this, I gave you a number based upon my own experience and what I believe, that I'm worth. However, now that I understand more about the role, I believe the role is worth more than the number that I put out there. And I'd like to see what we can do to lift that number. Get it? Because they're thinking about the role. You're thinking about you. When they put that job out, and Sonia, you've done that a million times in your recruiting life, right? You didn't have a person in mind. You didn't know the person yet. All you knew is the role worth relative to other, directors, other people in the organization, equity, all that stuff. You're thinking about the role. The candidate is thinking about themselves. So the candidate is saying, I believe this is the number that I'm worth, but the employer said, this is what I think the role is worth. Now, there's also flexibility, because they say, this is what the role is worth, and then they get a person, and the person has this many years of experience or that many years, and then it goes up or down a little bit, right? Depending on the person. But it starts with a core number.
right.
So you can say, I think the role is worth more than what I actually put out there.
And-
Well,
and
I
Sonia-
do understand that, but I feel like for me, and probably Sandra, you're probably going through it too. They expect us to know what the salary should be. And you're right. I do judge the role based on the company. If it's a global company, if it's got thousands of employees or 50 employees, all that comes into play. And you're right. I do know those compensation bands, but there are sometimes, at least I have done this, I've gone in lowballing just so I don't ink myself out from not getting a call.
And most people do that, Sonia. That's why I always suggest start high. But if you happen to start low, this is the saving grace here to push it up. That's all I'm suggesting. Always start high. I appreciate the not wanting to kick yourself out of the market. I get it. I really do. At the end of the day, though, as long as you've done your research, look, if you believe that when you've done your research, if the role, the size of the company and all that stuff, you're sort of seeing the median around, I'm making this up, 125, okay? You're not going to go in at 250. That's ridiculous. But you would start a little higher than that, because when all these Glassdoor, salary.com, blah, 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 they tend to median, right? It's kind of average. Push it up a little bit. And that's why the whole phrase total cash compensation package works. I'm seeking, so let's say the median is 125 on when you've done your research, you can say I'm seeking a total cash compensation package more in the 140 or 150, like 140 range, let's say. That's not a ridiculously high number relative to the median. So the chances are, if you're a little bit above what they can pay, they'll say, well, actually, we can really, only go to 130. Do you have any flexibility? And then you can say, well, let's talk about the total compensation, the benefits, and that kind of thing. That's when you start out. But if you end up giving a number that's too low, you can revisit it by talking more about the scope of the role.
Okay.
So with that, who else has a question about their search? Dia.
It's been a while since I've been on Zoom. I forgot how to use it.
I know that was a 2020 mistake. I was on mute. I've got, I believe, an initial phone call coming up with a company, just kind of exploring a role. It is a company that is not quite a startup, but they're not far out of that stage from my understanding. It's privately held and I don't have that much information yet. But it's also a smaller company. I believe it's got less than 50 people. So I don't know what they're going to be offering in the way of benefits, and didn't know what generally was out there with companies that were kind of in the, probably 40-person range, and whether to expect that or whether I'm going to need to, because I expected at this initial phone call, one of the first things that's going to come up is that salary compensation and the total comp concept, but I don't know whether to expect that that's probably something that's there or probably something that's not.
Is your question whether the company you think has benefits at all? Is that what you're saying?
As far as medical and stuff for a company with less than 50 people, I don't know that
yeah.
that's.
The only time that you're going to find a company, you're going to find a company not offer benefits, but maybe just offer a stipend is if they're really small, like
Okay.
3 people. At that stage, benefits brokers typically push away and say, oh, you guys are too small for us. 40, 30 people, 40 people, 50, fine, even 10 people. But 40 or 50, sure, they should have some. Now, is it going to be as robust as a 1,000-person company? Probably not.
Right.
But they're going to likely offer you some version of normal medical, dental, sure.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I know what it costs me to provide my own medical and dental outside of that system right now. And if I need to build that in the conversation, I just want to be mentally prepared to do that up front. So I wasn't sure what to expect as kind of the norm for companies that size out there these days.
It should be a normal, everybody's changed now with their cost share. I mean, hardly anybody's doing 100% for anything, maybe 80-20, 70-30 in terms of cost share for medical. Some version of a 401k match, maybe a contribution, standard sort of like maybe 3 weeks PTO, 4 weeks PTO. Some people are still doing sick and vacation, and then the random, life, yes, just disability, maybe tuition reimbursement, that kind of stuff. If it's a for-profit, maybe there's usually there's some sort of bonus. Often there's some sort of bonus built in, but yeah, that's normal stuff.
But I shouldn't expect them to be, medical and dental plan completely deplete just because they're under 50. Okay.
Pete, I would definitely say, I would suggest that, see how the first conversation goes and then ask for a benefits overview. But I'm just leaving an HR role that we had 30 employees and I thought our benefit package was pretty robust. And the 401k match was 6% after 6 months. And it was, I think a lot of times it comes down to the culture of the company and what the owners of the company really believe in. I was very lucky that we had owners that really believed in a robust benefit package. So I think the medical and dental were very competitive. People loved our benefits and really loved the 401k at 6%. So I think you'd be surprised, but I think it does come down to just kind of what the culture of the company is. And if you do your due diligence and you do your research, you might be able just to kind of hear that in the way they've structured the company.
Yeah.
Well, that's all.
And Pete, again, Youre often mentions total cash compensation. So it may get to the point where you might negotiate maybe a little bit higher base pay because you're losing something. You're going to have to pay more for your medical than you used to pay, or there's no 401k match or whatever. At the other end, as Tenny said, you may be surprised, but there's also the other possibility that the benefits aren't that rich.
No, absolutely. And that's exactly what it's. And clearly I need to be going this conversation prepared to take it either direction, but that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with where I'm going in. So thank you.
Yeah.
Dia, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so how can I do my due diligence on a recruiter who's contacted me? They're in another part of the world. Everything seems to be on the up and up, but it looks like the recruiting agency is kind of a startup for a third. you know, and I don't want to step on anybody's feet, but at the same time, I don't want to get trapped in a bad situation.
Look, there are a lot of companies now that are outsourcing, I would even say offshoring their recruiting to recruiters in other countries, and those recruiters are called sourcers. So they're just looking for resumes, right? And they will just, you know, reach out to candidates. And that they're just sort of usually one-off, very small, like a one-person kind of shop or whatever. And, you know, usually it's legit. I think it's not really even about, is the recruiter legit? Because, like, hopefully they are. You have to see what happens in the process, right? You think about what is, in fact, let me ask you this, Dia. What is your biggest concern about this? What's your biggest fear about this? Like, why are you doing your due diligence? What do you think is going to happen?
I think part of it is I don't want to waste my time pursuing this, because I've been let down enough times before that I don't want to get my hopes up. So I'm trying to keep my hopes low.
Okay, so think of it this way. You're not wasting your time, because if there's a job, okay, and they ask you for your resume, send your resume. That's a click of a button. Takes you no time whatsoever. If they come back to you and say, hey, we have an interview for you, great. You talk to the recruiter, you learn more about the role, schedule the interview, you take some time to do the interview. So what is that? A little bit of prep time, an hour. You're not losing anything in this process, I guess is my point. Okay. Now, if they start asking you for things like, you know, your personal information and bank account, obviously that's right. But if it looks like a normal process, we want your resume, you know, we're going to have a phone screen with you, normal, no harm, no foul. I'd go for it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And remember, by the way, you're not working for the recruiter. You're working for the employer. The employers often don't know what kind of recruiters to get. Okay. Because they don't have the time. So they get referrals, or they think about but they can't control what the recruiter is doing. So don't blame me. Like, don't let it, if you don't have, this is a sidebar. If you don't have the best experience with the recruiter, don't hold it against the employer, because the employer doesn't know what the recruiter is doing on the back end if they're a third party. Okay. So just take it for what it is, go through the process. If it feels normal at all, keep it going. Once you meet with the employer, that's when you do your vetting as to whether you want that job. Tenny or Vern?
Yeah, it's as Shira said, there's all kinds of recruiters out there, and some are great and some are not so great. And so you might not have a great experience with a recruiter, but if they get you to the interview, then, you know, you're not going to get the job unless you get to the interview. So you just do the best you can and deal with, you know, the recruiter. And some of them, like I said, some of them are great and some of them are not so great. And it's just the way it is.
I think it's important to realize that just because a recruiter reaches out doesn't mean that you're kind of in a automatic agreement with them. You can use good consumer awareness, right? You do your research as much as you can on them. You take that initial call, you take that initial contact, and if it's not something that seems to work for you and fit for you, then you tell them thank you very much and good luck in finding a candidate, and let it go. But I think sometimes because we're in a job search mode and we feel like they've reached out, we've got to stay with them. And that's just not true. It's a consumer relationship, even though there's in most cases, no pay being transacted between you and a recruiter. You don't owe them anything other than to see if this was a good working relationship that y'all can move forward with this opportunity. That's it.
At the same time, I definitely respect what Tenny said. At the same time, a lot of recruiters are not as professional as what you might hope them to be. And that's not necessarily of the fault of the employer, because the employer does not know how the recruiter is recruiting. So even if you don't like the recruiter or don't appreciate it, something about their style, I would hesitate to ask you to just push them aside, because the employer might be perfectly legitimate. It might be a great employer, but they just hired the wrong recruiter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I mean, if the opportunity seems like something that you would really want, there's other ways to pursue that. I mean, you can definitely try to go to the company directly. You can find out what recruiting company is working on that assignment. I mean, there's just other ways to do it. So I totally agree with you.
I will, so let me go to the other side of that too. Sometimes when an employer has hired a recruiter, a third-party recruiter, they're doing so in part because they don't want to receive direct outreach from the candidates. Okay, so you got to weigh that as well. So in other words, if you do go around the recruiter, they might think, oh, you're not following process, and then it could be a character thing as well. It's just like on a job posting where they say, we want your cover letter, we want your resume, we want you to do X, Y, Z. And if you don't follow the instructions, sometimes the employer can hold that against you. So if the recruiter reaches out, again, this is my opinion, Tanny might have a different one. I say, go through the process, right, of whatever the recruiter's saying. Again, free country, do what you want. But if you do decide to go directly to the employer, they could think, oh, why is this person skirting around the recruiter when we have a legitimate process in place? So again, there's two sides to it. So you see how it is. You get two recruiters in the room and it's like 5 opinions. Okay, so there's no exact way to do this. You've got to think of it case by case. Take all the input that we're giving you, weigh it for yourself, filter it out, and see what works for you. Okay. All right. Other questions? Lena.
Hi, good morning. I had an interview back on July 7th, and it was with the internal HR person and the hiring manager. And the interview went well. I thought the salary range, we were totally off. It was an entry-level position, and I knew it was going to be low. So I think my range was like 80 to 100, and they said that position was like at 60. So, but they said that they might have some flexibility in that. Maybe they could make it like a senior position and have more, range, salary wise or whatever. So, I think I didn't hear back from them. I wanted to do a follow-up, but I remember I had asked the question earlier to you guys, and the thing that stuck out in my mind was that if they want you, they will come find you, So I kind of let it go. And then I waited another week. I saw my application on Workday was still set in progress. So I was like, so July 30th, about 3 weeks later, I did the follow-up just to see where they were at in their whatever search, and I never heard back. So I guess it's been another 2 weeks since then. And I'm kind of just like, I should just, drop it, move on. I just wish that they would like close it out, in Workday for closure. But in the meantime, I did find 2 other positions in that company that I'm interested in. So, they kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, but I'm like, just push that aside because I don't know what their workflow is. But I guess I just want to run it by. Is it okay to just like continue to apply, reach out, let them know that I'm still interested in, other positions within the company?
You certainly can.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. You just have to manage your own expectations. And by the way, the fact that they're using Workday says to me that they're a larger company. Is that right?
I think they have about 500 employees.
Yeah, and they have enough where their recruiters are slammed, and the recruiter's only going to follow up with the candidate. Well, typically going to follow up with the candidates that they're interested in. I wish it were the case that they close the loop with every single person. They could have hundreds and thousands of resumes, you just don't know. I mean, you're seeing them as you've got a target on them, like you're laser focused on them, but from their perspective, you're just one of hundreds of people. I mean, this is just the reality of it. So you can apply to other things, but make sure that those other things are very, very similar to the job that you applied for, because otherwise, if the recruiter does see your application more than once, they're going to think that you don't know what you want. If the jobs that you're applying for are disparate enough, that's the other side of it.
Right. And I thought about that, but I was just like, well, I've been a business analyst for the past 15 years, and that title, like so many different tasks fall under that umbrella title. So I have experience in the other, 2 jobs that I'm planning to apply for. So I'll just, reiterate that when I send an email to the HR manager about my experience and how they fit. But
yeah, that's fine. But again, manage your expectations around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right, David.
Yeah. Hey, good morning. Thank you all again for hosting this weekly session. It's really very valuable, and I certainly appreciate it. So I recently have had a couple of interviews, 2 different organizations, been through to what I believe are a final interview. And everything went great until the end, basically, until the sort of the final interview. And there were just a couple of questions that I felt I could have answered better, and seemed that my response, wasn't as well received as I might have liked it to have been. Frankly, I got a little tripped up on a couple of them. My question then is related to sort of follow-up. I'm very interested in both of them. Either of the positions would be great. Is it okay to address that in a follow-up email? Or is that sort of
address one in particular?
Like one of the particular questions that was like, hey, you asked about this. My response, I felt something along the lines of, I felt I could have, like, here's the other examples of work that I've done related to what you asked.
Okay.
Something like that. Is addressing that in a follow-up email appropriate?
Oh,
or do you
very
just
much
let it
so.
go?
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, did you already send a thank you note?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I would send another note. Absolutely. And say, follow up to our interview. Dear so-and-so, upon reflection, after our last interview, I realized that there were a couple of other examples that I could have provided to better address your question. Bing, bing. Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Great. Great.
Yeah, Aaron or Tenny?
Yeah, Judge, and in that, maybe something along the lines, here's an example that I think better demonstrates how my skills and experience are a good match for this role. I mean, that's basically what you're saying.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
Cool. All right, other questions?
Hi, I'm Susan Srasasimo. Can I ask any question kind of related
Anything
to
about job
recruiting?
search? Any question about job search?
Okay. I'm one of these people out here who have, liberal arts degree, but a strong project management and data analysis background, international affairs professional. I'm a published researcher. I'm great at doing qualitative and quantitative research, writing and analyzing extremely difficult problems on the international circuit, related to international development, international business, energy policy, mostly via the Middle East, but not only. I've lived and worked abroad in Iraq. And when I came back from Iraq as a research fellow in 2018, April 2018, I've just really struggled to find a role that was anywhere near the kind of the meta level that I was working at. I was working with international leaders in the UN, the World Health Organization, consulate generals, parliamentarians, military leaders, president of the USIP, and just heavy hitters, big hitters. I moved out to the East Coast in November of 2019. Believe me, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but bottom line is I started working for Facebook, doing high-level policy work, and then COVID hit, got laid off from a 2-year contract in the middle of the contract in January, and it's just been very, very difficult finding anything near the caliber again that of the work that I was doing after grad school in Iraq. And at Facebook, I've had 2 interviews that were very exciting. And in both, I was told after the interview, one of them was with the NIH, that I was overqualified. And it deeply surprised me. Was an interview in this particular case that was mediated by my recruiter, who approached me for this role. She was flabbergasted. It's never had happened. And I just having a sneaking suspicion that being overqualified is biting me in the butt. How do you address overqualification as a mid-career professional in an area of the United States where there's a lot of policy level professionals with the kind of experience I have and more? How would you address that?
So here's the thing with overqualification. Overqualification, let me be really clear about this, okay? It has nothing to do with you. It's about them. It's about their perception of who they believe is going to find this opportunity interesting, challenging, and is going to want to stay in the role for a decent length of time. As we speak, I am closing up an executive director search. Okay, literally, hopefully we'll sign the contract today. And the one big hesitation that this committee, the search committee, had about this candidate wasn't actually overqualification, but it's related to this. And that is that this person is a rock star, okay, and has had some shorter tenure in the last number of years because this person's been poached. He's that good. And the biggest concern of the search committee is that they're going to be doing the search again in a year. Literally, I mean, we had like a 15, 20-minute conversation, round and round and round and round. Oh my gosh, is he going to stay? Is he going to stay? Is he going to leave? Is he going to stay? Overqualification, same idea. They have a perception based on your resume that you are not going to be challenged enough in this role. You would think, they'd think, oh, wow, we're getting more than our money's worth here, right? But the perception is that you're going to come in and you're going to take a look at this job. You're like, one hand tied behind my back. 6 months later, you're looking again. I'm not saying that that's true. I'm not saying that you might be perfectly happy. It's their maybe misperception of what they think the appropriate level is. And that if somebody is above that level, they think that it's a hiring risk. That's why it's about them and it's not about you. So it's a little bit challenging to address this unless you, how do I put this? That you do acknowledge that you're a little overqualified, but there's some other reason that you feel that this is a right role. Then you'd actually you'd overcome the objection with them. So there's somebody who's not on this call today, but he's typically on this call. And he's been trying, he's a government relations person and has been wanting to shift into the environmental sector. And he has been dealing with this all over the place, right? Because he doesn't have an environmental background. And so he's been applying for things that are a little beneath him. And he gets the overqualified. He's underqualified with the environmental, but he's overqualified with the GR. And he's had to overcome it and say, look, you don't understand. I am so darn tootin' passionate about saving the environment. I am delighted to take a role that is a little bit, beneath my abilities, but just because I'm just so, right? It's worked and it hasn't, you know what I mean? He's had mixed results with it, but at least he's tried, okay? And so I just, I don't know the specific situation here, but I can just encourage you to have a verbal conversation. Why do you believe that I'm overqualified? Was it about my background that's making you feel that way? Can we have an opportunity for me to address your concerns?
Yeah, I mean, in both cases, it was being mediated by a third party. I was working through a contracting firm, so I didn't have that opportunity.
Awesome.
And it was kind of like dead in the water. So it sounds like addressing the elephant in the room before it becomes an issue. If I have a sense that I'm applying, and forgive me if I've mischaracterized what you're saying, but what I'm hearing you say is address the elephant in the room. If I'm applying for a more junior role, just get it out there and then reemphasize why I'm so interested. Because at the end of the conversation, I mean, it was an opportunity to work in Dr. Fauci's office. I don't have a public health background. So I don't have any idea how I could have been overqualified. I asked my recruiter if there's anything else that I don't know that's not being said. She said, I don't get that. I know these people. I've never run into this situation before. So it.
Well, there's something else. There's something else too. There's a different, when an employer is vetting you, there's a lot of things they're vetting you on, but two things are what I'd call your lane versus your versus the sector. Okay. So the sectorally, if you will, no, you didn't have the healthcare background. But in terms of your lane, which is your profession, in terms of the role itself, maybe that's where they felt like you were overqualified. Does that make sense? You were maybe under in the sector, but you were over in the lane.
I can see that,
Yeah, that's where they probably had agita.
Yeah.
which,
And Susan, just to reiterate what Shira said, I mean, the overqualified bias is just so strong and I've been on both sides of the fence. I've seen it as a VP of HR, hiring managers and people within the company having that bias. I've seen it when I've been applying for a job, just like you have, and and run into the overqualified. The other thing I'd ask you, Susan, in terms of your job search, it sounds like you've had relationships with people at very high levels. Are any of those relationships strong enough for you to reach out, or maybe you've already done this in terms of, I'm in the job search now, here's what I'm looking for. Do you have any suggestions for me, any advice, anybody you could introduce me to?
yes and no. Some of them are foreign nationals. I have a security clearance and they are in government positions. So
Yeah.
it absolutely does not behoove me to cultivate those relationships.
Right. Okay.
They were kind of a one and done while I was in Iraq before I had the clearance.
Yeah. Okay.
So, however, thank you. There is one part, the country director of the World Health Organization in Iraq is a US national. He's a Syrian American, but he's a US citizen. So I can definitely tap into that. And I can't believe I forgot about that.
Hey,
yes, thank you.
No, and think about people that you've worked for in the past, even if you haven't spoken to them in 5 years. But at the time, there was a very solid relationship between you and your boss, or you and another colleague in the same field in which you're trying to, find work. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone, and call somebody from 5 years ago and say, hey, how are you? It's been 5 years. And I can almost guarantee you'll have a great conversation. And obviously, as part of the conversation, they'll say, so what are you up to, Susan? And you're going to say, well, here's what I'm up to right now. Right?
Yeah, you're right. I was hesitant to reach out to some of those who we've had distance, more time and space distance, but maybe what the hell, like you said, what's the harm?
Yes, and hopefully you do that and you come back on this call and share with the rest of the group what a great conversation you had. And they actually gave me a lead for a job. Just to I guess verify this stuff works. Just trust me on that. Okay.
That's great. I really appreciate that, Vern.
Yeah.
All right, anyone else?
Hi, I have a quick question that I wrote in the chat for a potential federal contracting position.
Go for it.
The hiring manager wants to move quickly. He's asking his contracting firm to draw a letter. I am at the same time in the middle of an interview with another company, and if it works, that other company might have better benefits, compensation package. But knowing my character, I do not want to rescind the first offer. So how do I approach this delicately?
The other offer, the
first one.
Well, but the other one, have they made you an offer yet?
They will send over a letter as soon as I give them the paperwork.
So sorry, let's call it company A and company B. So
Yes.
Company A is the one who wants to offer you the job. Company B, have they offered you a job yet?
No, I'm in the middle of
interviewing. Understood. Company A, is this one of those situations where they want to extend you a contingent offer based on whether or not they get the contract? Or is it just full out hire?
Probably for a hire. This is for a federal contract. So I'm hoping Tenny would give me more insight, because I don't know how long it would take them to draft the offer letter, negotiation, and
well, look, it's not over till it's over, right? So I would say go for it. Keep moving along. You know, you've got your other opportunity. You can continue to pursue it. Once they actually give you a formal written offer, you can then have a little bit of, you know, a few days even to negotiate with them. And then you would see, where are you still pending with this other opportunity with company B? You might be able to draw it out, I guess, is the point.
Most likely I would have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tammy?
I would totally agree. You know, it does depend on whether they're offering you a position contingent on a contract start,
Right.
or just contingent on a background check. I think that's what you said in the chat there.
Yeah.
If it's just on the background check, that can really, it just depends on the quality of service they use. I mean, I would literally have them come back sometimes in 20 minutes, sometimes in 3 days. It just depends on the workload of the background service. But the first question, and Shara's right, when they give you that contingent offer, just ask them, you know, can I have a couple of days to think about this? You know, and that way it does buy you a little bit time on the other side to see where you are. But it sounds like you want to go with company A. You said company A is the one that has the better benefits.
No,
Company B is
Company
probably because it's a bigger biotech.
Okay.
But company A is a good group. They actually recruited on their own, but relying on the staffing company to do the offer
Okay.
letter.
Well, sounds good, Terry. Well done on you. Sounds good.
I'm actually stuck though.
Well, again, you can continue to keep going through the process. The other thing you can do too, I should have mentioned, is with company B, if they're your first choice, this is really important, Terry, ready? Tell company B that company A, you don't have to say by name, but a company has just extended you an offer. Is there anything, company B, that you can do to expedite this process along? Now, company B is going to say one of two things when you do that. If you are their first choice and they really want you, once you've lit the fire, once you've said that there's an offer on another offer on the table, company B will either say to you, oh, Terry, thank you so much for letting us know. Hold tight. Let's see what we can do. We'll expedite, blah, 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 blah. Okay, then you know that you are in really strong consideration. If you're not under strong consideration, you're going to say the following. Oh, Terry, thank you so much for letting us know. We can't hold you back. We know that you've got to do what you've got to do. You know, we're not quite sure when this process is going to wrap up, but thanks so much for letting us know. That's your clue that that's not a viable opportunity anymore.
Company B did ask me outright, and they're moving me to the second round.
When you say they asked you outright, they asked you what?
Asking me whether I have a pending offer, and I said yes. And so they're moving me on to the next round.
So there you go. There you go. They are expediting it for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you have to say, now you got to tell them, you know, it's not just a pending offer, like it's a real offer. And you got to like say, fine, go through the second level. But then once that second level happens, keep them posted, keep company B posted at exactly where you're at. Because you're going to have to say to them, look, you know, I have to give them company A an answer by whatever, tomorrow, the next day, you know, if you're interested in me, we got to move this forward really fast. Partner with them, I guess is the point.
I see. Should I be honest with company A? Say I have another pending offer for
well, you're not, but you don't have a pending offer with company B.
Oh, right.
You don't. You don't.
Yeah.
Company B, you say I have an offer with company A. Company A, there's nothing you can say to them because there isn't. You know, it's not done till it's done. You're only doing this, Terry, because company B is your top choice. If company B was not your top choice, then there's nothing to say. Company B is your top choice, therefore you're telling them that company A is giving you an offer, and that it's to get company B to ratchet their timeline. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Hello?
Yeah, Rena?
It's a dumb question, I think, but I swear I've been thinking about doing this. The job market is kind of crazy. You go for 3-4 rounds of interview and then people just ghost you. When what what if you financially okay? So I'm not desperate in terms of income. I really want to get into a project manager role in the energy sector. I have the background and pretty good experience, but maybe not as solid as others. Sometimes I see a job that I absolutely want to do. And even if I'm not considered the primary candidate, don't laugh at me, but I swear I would love to write a cover letter and say, look, I could be an assistant. I don't care for the income. I want to put my foot in this industry and combine my graduate education and my project management background. People think I'm crazy, but if I don't necessarily care for the income right now, and I'm more leaning towards the experience, and I know that's not something people do, how would the company see me? I would love to.
That's not
I
going to
love
go. It's not going to, I know why you're saying that, Rena. In fact, I know a lot of people who do that. You're not crazy for thinking it. Okay. Trust me.
Okay.
There are plenty of people who think that, but here's the thing, Rena, we always talk about this on this call. The employer is trying to minimize their risk. They're not,
Okay.
I'm just got to be straight. They're not hiring you for your sake. They're hiring you for their sake.
Okay.
So from their perspective, they only want to bring somebody in that they feel is qualified for the role, who's going to stick around, who's going to be a good culture fit, where the risk is minimized. For them to take a chance on somebody who hasn't done the exact job, who's willing to who says that they're willing to take a lower level role, but reality is, Rena, look, you say that now, and I'm not disbelieving you. I mean, I believe that you believe it, okay? But actually getting in a role where you say, oh, I'm willing to do whatever, and then doing that whatever job, you might feel a little bit differently once you're in that role. Okay.
No, I was saying, go ahead and hire the person you want. Maybe I come in as an associate project manager. I'm working in a voluntary role right now, and I do way more than the people who are hired. I can do that, but sometimes the experience is so critical and so exciting. And if you're not financially trapped,
I get
how would
I get it. It's just, your fight. It's an uphill battle. It just is, because this is not the kind of thing that they're naturally going to think about doing. Because again, they're not doing it for you, right? They would only bring you on board if they felt like they had a business need. I'll tell you, there are people who even try to get volunteer roles and get turned down by nonprofits, because guess what? To even bring somebody on a volunteer role, you have to have the capacity for that. If somebody has to work with them and give them work, assignments, blah, 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 blah. Volunteering is not just volunteering. Even if they're not paying you, it's still work, which means somebody's got to supervise you. So you got to be the right role. There's got to be the right everything. It's got to make good business sense for them to bring anybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
The other part of the other part of that, Rena, that could be in the employer's mind, you could make a strong case. I'll be the administrative assistant. I want to be in this field. This is the field I want to be in. And even the other bias is, well, yeah, you're going to be the administrative assistant. You'll do a great job here, but you're looking to be in this field at a higher level. So, 6 months or a year from now, you find another opportunity in the field, and now you're gone. Right. As opposed to, and you can say this, but the company won't believe you. Honestly, I'll work for your company for the next 10 years. That you can say that, but no one's going to believe you. You don't know that. You can't make that kind of, you can't make that kind of offer or that commitment. Nobody knows what's going to happen 10 years from now. Now, there are, the other thing I would say is, and I agree with Youre, it is really, really, really a tough sell. The only way that I think that actually you might find what you're looking for is you need to have someone who knows you well, who believes in you and says, okay, I'm going to take a chance on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're absolutely right, Fern.
Yeah. That now, and so I'll tell you a personal story of when I accepted a job and took a $30,000 pay cut. And the only reason that I got, probably not the only reason, I think I had the skills and the talent. The main reason I got hired in this HR role was because the entire HR staff was female, and the vice president of human resources was female. She wanted a male. I happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right skills. And I was at that point struggling in terms of my job search, and I was starting to bleed financially. So I needed some income. And even though I tried to negotiate the salary, they just didn't have the money to do it. So,
Okay.
so it can happen, but it's really rare. Try to find that guardian angel who will take you under their wings.
100% agree. Yeah, when your reputation goes before you, when somebody knows you, likes you, trusts you, and understands your story, really gets it, they're much more likely to take the risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we go, I have two other quick things. Why would you go through 3-4 rounds of interview, get told congratulations, and then get ghosted? Did somebody better come along after that?
When you say congratulations, what do you mean?
You get an email from the recruiter saying, congratulations, we've gotten the go ahead and start the process. And then they go, and then they go quiet for 2 weeks, and then they come back and say, oh, we're sorry. He changed his mind and went with somebody else from another recruiter. That's strange.
Exactly what happened. And that is what happens all the time. Things
Wow.
things change. If they're using multiple recruiters, last minute candidates come in all the time. You never know.
That's true in the market, yeah. And one last thing, can you quickly revamp for me or rehash for me? I started these calls late, and I think one time I heard you talk about using LinkedIn, like putting the company's name in the search box, looking for people. Remember that?
Yes. Do you want to know how to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I always use the American Red Cross. Don't ask me why. This is my go-to sample. Okay. The American Red Cross. Notice how I started typing and the company name came up.
Okay.
Now this is the Red Cross's LinkedIn page. It's not their website. It's their LinkedIn page.
Yes. Okay.
Right here, see where it says the number of employees?
Yes.
It looks like that number is not hyperlinked. It actually is.
Okay.
Put your cursor there and you'll see the hyperlink.
Okay.
Click on it.
Yes.
Now you see all these results, right? A lot of people.
Yeah.
Now you can start to filter down. You can start to go by location, for example. Let's say it's DC. Let's say you want to look for the HR person. So you would type in, let's say human resources or human capital or talent acquisition, whatever. And now it breaks it all down. Let's say you want to look by connection. You want to see if you have any first levels or second levels. And you just keep on narrowing it down until you figure out who you want to talk to.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. As a lot of you know, I offer a prayer meeting right after this call for those of you who would like to stay on. So feel free to stay around with me. And if you'd like to continue with your day, we would look forward to seeing you next week. Same bat time, same bat station, as they say. So with that, have a blessed day, everyone. And again, if you'd like to stay on for the prayer call, you're welcome to do so.
Thank you, Sharon.